Hi, this is Ying from the Haunted Bay, and today we're just going to talk to June Ahern, the psychic medium who's been on many of our episodes. We've interviewed her before, and she kind of gave us a general idea of what happened, how she became a psychic, but today we want to go kind of deeper into her story and ask her what happened. And all right, you can take it over, June.
I know you're interested in my near-death experience. And when I have told it before, as you say on your video that we did at the Condor Club that first time, I talk very briefly about it. It isn't something that I shared readily because it was strange to me, and not just strange, it touched my heart and my psyche so deeply. And I started speaking about it a little more in the last few years. And what I had experienced as a young woman, it started out as a very exciting night. I had a date with a new guy. And you know, when you have a date and you're a young woman, well, any age really, and you're excited, I went out and I bought this really cute faux leather black dress with little, I could see it, you know, it was a little mini dress and little red stitching on it. And I was just so excited. Off we went down to the South Bay, and we went to a jazz club. I got in. I was underage, but I got in because my sister had lent me her driver's license. We don't really look anything alike, but anyway, I got in. And then afterwards, when we came out, you know, we both had a couple of drinks. I didn't know, later I found out that he had more than a couple of drinks. He, you know, had some drugs. And so we're out and we're driving and we got lost. And we got lost in a large complex, like a business complex, big parking lot complex. And we were really lost. And then he just started to nod out. And I was like, whoa. And this is back in the day, there was no seatbelts. You know, seatbelts did not, if they existed, I don't know. I didn't know them. Nobody used them. And suddenly we ran right into a utility pole, head on, his foot on the gas. I went through the windshield. And when I went through the windshield, you know, I caught myself on the dashboard and I came back in. And when I came back in, I brought the windshield glass into my face. And what happened to my face was the glass just tore. Well, here, just tore off my face. And, you know, I can't recall everything, of course, because I was completely, I had had a head injury. Plus, I took out the gearbox with my left leg, my left thigh. I hit it so hard, the gearbox came out. And for years, I had a contusion there. I had a really swell there before it went down. Oh, God, it took 10 years, really. So when I was sitting in the car, these are the kind of thoughts that flew through my head. One was, oh my God, I'm bleeding on my new clothes. And that's what, you know, I told the police officer later, you know, oh no, I'm bleeding on my clothes. The most remarkable thing is I felt very calm. There was a woman standing at the bottom, at the edge of the car in the front of the car. She was standing there and she was looking in. And I just remember her. It still touches me emotionally. That's why maybe I didn't talk about it for years. And she had white clothing on. She was probably a middle-aged woman or something. She wasn't a young woman or an old woman. And she looked in and she just was so calm. And I felt so warm. And she said, "It's all right, June. You'll be okay. It's all right." Even now I feel it because it was such a beautiful message at a terrible time. And I just felt as though I relaxed. And he's next to me, moaning and groaning. And next thing I know, there's a policeman sitting in the seat next to me, and he's asking me questions. What is your name? Stay awake. You're going to be okay. You know, and he's saying all these things to me. And as I said, all I could say is, oh no, I'm bleeding on my new clothes. Oh my God. Then I don't remember what happened. I remember looking out over to my right, and there was an ambulance there. And then I don't remember how I got in it. I'm sure they took me out in it. But I was told later at the hospital that I expired for a very short period of time. My heart just stopped beating. And I was gone for seconds, 20, 30 seconds. But it was a 30, 20 seconds that changed my entire life forever. I didn't go through a white tunnel. I didn't go through anything. I just was there. And what I saw was a beautiful ornate fence, an iron ornate fence, and it was kind of maybe chest high. And behind it were people having a party, like a garden party. And they were all there. They were laughing. It was gentle. It was peaceful. It was joyful. And I only recognized these people really from photo albums, relatives that I didn't personally know, because when I left Scotland to come to America, I was only 6. And so I didn't really remember. And some of them had already died. They were my mother's relatives, and mostly really all on my mother's side. And there was my grandparents. And I did remember my grandfather more because he had, I had gone back to Scotland in '69. So I reunited with him. And I just wanted to stay there. It had a glow. It had a beautiful, warm glow. It felt blissful, ecstatically blissful. We were so relaxed. Now, I've meditated for years. I have never reached that level of blissfulness that I was in at that moment. And perhaps that's why I did meditate, to want to experience that again. As I said, I was turned back from the pearly gates, and I wanted to go in, and I somehow conveyed this. I want to come in. You know, I don't remember really if I said it in words or whatever, but I just knew I wanted to go beyond this gate and join their party. And my grandparents are looking at me and they're going, "Not now, June, go back. Not now, June." And then they went like that. And I felt really rejected. So when I woke up in the hospital, I came to in the hospital, I was lying on, bed, hospital bed. And I went through the most excruciating pain as they began to put what they were saying is they were putting something into my face through needles to keep it from the exposure, because I had no face. I was down to just what was in there, muscles and bones and whatever. And so they kept calling me Marie. That's my sister's name. And I kept saying, "No, no." And they were like, "Oh, don't worry." And then they had to cut my clothes off, which was really, I said, "Would you please not cut it off? Would you kind of maybe take it off?" Because they had to go over my head. It was one of those dresses. And they said, "Oh, sure, we're going to cut it on the seams. And that way you can sew it back together." And I said, "Okay." And my mother was in San Francisco. It was 2 a.m. They called her. She had no way to get down to me. My father was in a sleep. He had been out at the bars all night. So she called a friend of mine, and he came and got her and brought her down. And when she came in, they said, "Well, you need to sign the papers, so we need to operate on her right away, her face." And they told her that one of the best, or the best plastic surgeon in Palo Alto at that time, he was on emergency duty. He was walking out of the hospital, the emergency entrance, while I was being wheeled back in. And he said he took one look at me and said, "I know I'm the one that has to fix her." And thank God he did, because he really did a good job. Otherwise, I don't know, maybe young Frankensteina, I don't know. So my mother said, she looked down at my face. I said, "We have your daughter Marie here." And she said, I looked down and all I could see was one blue eye. And I said, "That's not Marie, that's my daughter June." And there it went. I remember going into surgery, and I saw, when you're there, they're taking x-rays of my face, and I saw my face reflection, and I started crying, screaming, like, "My face, what, my face?" And they said, they took it away. And so I went into surgery. I was there for hours, and they put me back together. Later, he told me he used the skin from my neck to pull it up over my face. Now, I'd love to have it now. I wish I could go back and say, "Okay, let's do it." But what it caused later, as time went on, is it caused a big droop in my mouth for quite a while, because it was tight. Everything was tight. And this scar here was like a rope. It literally looked like a snake rope going up. And this side here was all broke. But, they said, "Thank God you're young. You're going to heal." It's always easy to tell somebody, but they were really concerned about my eye because they had been pulling glass out of my eye. So my eye was covered, and they didn't let me, I was in the hospital a week, Now, those are the days that they actually kept you in the hospital. I was in there a week and they wouldn't let me, I had to use the bedpan because they didn't want me to go, even though I could kind of get up. They didn't want me to see what I looked like, because they knew it would be a shock. And my family all came to see me and they all told me. I had one sister that had to leave. She couldn't look at me. And my brother, one of my brothers was there and he was cracking me up and it was hurting me. He was very funny guy. Uh, and nobody would tell me what I looked like. And when I went out for the first time, I stayed down in San Jose with my brother and his wife, and she had had a birthmark removed. So she understood what it's like to be disfigured. And when I went out with her to the supermarket, I had people look at me and start to talk and whisper. And I had a woman say, "Oh my God, your face." And my sister-in-law, who's kind of quiet, little meek, she said, "You just shut up. You just stop it." And she took me away. It was a very difficult time. And people want to know, things like, well, what happened after? Did you become psychic right away? I had such a hard time just trying to recover, trying to fit back into my community when I came back. Young people all hang out together in big groups. And I didn't want to hang out with people because I didn't want people to see me. It was a difficult time. And yeah, so here I am. It changed my course of my life forever. I had no inkling, I had no desire, I had no focus on becoming a psychic reader, being able to see dead people like that. As a matter of fact, I had signed up for truck driving school, long distance truck driving school, because I wanted to just get out of town and travel across the United States. And I like trucks. But that didn't come to be. It took me a long, long time to heal. Very long time.
Can you tell us how the psychic experiences started? Like how many years after that accident, how it started, what your experiences were?
It took a while. I was off work. I was a switchboard operator downtown, and it took a while. I was off for about 6 months or so, and they said, well, you need to come back or lose your job. So I went back, and that's when it really started happening. So about 6 months, I started having what you call deja vus, meaning that I would see, if I was going to meet somebody in the street, I would see them the day before. If I was going to hear from somebody, and that's back when you didn't know who was calling you. There was not even any answering machines. And I would just know who was going to call me, who I was going to see, even what they were going to say. And I began to have these experiences more and more. Now, before my accident, I had a card reading from a friend's friend, the playing cards. And she had told me, you're going to be in an accident. There's going to be 2 men by your side. Now, this new date was another man, because I was seeing another guy, nothing serious, well, serious on his part, not my part. And so within about, that was November. So 4.5 months or so later, I had the car accident. So I got interested. After I started having these deja vus more often and knowing things, I wanted to learn to read those cards, the playing cards. I bought a book. I still have it. It's really old, it's fallen apart. And I saw this notice, and it was a school called the Orpheum in San Francisco way back in the 70s. It's no longer, it became the Learning Annex later. And it said tarot cards. Well, I didn't really know what tarot cards were. I kind of heard about them, but I didn't know. So I went and took a class, and I began to read. And the teacher asked me to stay after class one time. It was a series of classes, and she had told me, okay, you have a really strong talent for this. You should think about doing it. I said, okay. So I started reading for everybody. Anybody who knew me knew that I carried my cards with me everywhere. I put them by my bedside at night. I had these cards. And I was reading for people. I was reading for my sister's friend. Her name was Randy. And my sister was going to go to Hawaii with her friend, Randy, and the other young lady. I can't remember her name. But the night before, I was reading Frances' card, my sister Frances, and I told her, do not go to Hawaii. There's going to be a really bad accident with your friends. Don't go. And she missed her plane, actually. I mean, she didn't go not because she listened to me. She missed her plane. And the next morning, I woke up with her screaming and crying. And I went there. She was on the phone, and she was, no. And what happened was her friends were in a car accident. And they were both killed in Hawaii. So I became aware that there was something different happening in my life. So this is, about a good more 3 years later after the accident when I took this card reading thing. So that's when I began to read for people, the ladies across the street, the ladies up, up the block, and I didn't, again, want to become a reader. I just was very interested in this whole process. So I didn't really right then have spirit communication for another few years after that. And my first one was a young man named Clyde. I had ran away at 24. I ran away to Oregon, went up there on a train, and I met this guy hitchhiking, and we had a lot of fun. He was a very nice man, very sweet, very nice. And he took me to meet his family, his mother, his father, his sisters, and everything. And that's the kind of people they were. They were just very sweet. And I laughed, and I hadn't seen him for quite a long time. And he showed up one time in front of me, and I was scared. I was like, oh my God, I think I'm seeing something. I was living with my sister Frances still, and I said, I'm seeing this Clyde. She knew who Clyde was. I had photographs and such. And the next day, his mother called me and said Clyde had committed suicide. So I really didn't know what was going on. I honestly didn't understand. A few years after that, my grandparents came and came to me, and my mother had told me later, after I told her, Granny and Granda came, and she said, I really wanted to hear and just know that they were doing well and like that. And, it just started happening. And then in the 80s, I had more visitation, depending on the person I was reading for. My mediumship part of me didn't really evolve very quickly. I was more interested in doing the tarot readings. And I worked on a murder case. I worked actually on 2 murder cases in the 80s and a missing child case. But the murder cases were, they weren't fun. They were very difficult to work with. And I worked with the police. So it was even more difficult if you work with the police.
When you had your first visitation, how did you feel about that? Were you, just tell us, how did you feel about that?
Scared. I felt very confused, very scared,
Yeah.
as though I wanted to back away. Like, no, what are you doing here? Actually, it was in my bedroom. I lived in a flat in San Francisco, and my bedroom was way in the back, and it was frightening the way he just showed up. I can't say if the room got cold or not, because it was a very cold room to begin with, but it was so brief. When my grandparents came, it was longer. And they actually got me. I was scrubbing out the bathroom, and I felt a presence behind me, and I turned around, and they took me to the bedroom and sat me down and said, well, yeah, all is well. Don't be afraid now. And, your heart's thumping, and you're thinking, this can't happen. This can't be true. This really is my imagination. You logically go through a lot of that. And at the same time, it's not. So afraid, uncertain, thinking maybe I'm nuts, and like that.
Did they look like solid, like physical people, or what was that like?
Clyde did not. He appeared in such a manner that it was so quick and so kind of wispy. Though it was a form, I could, a face and everything, I could tell it was him. My grandparents, they appeared more strongly. Now they both appeared in my mind, in my mind. My grandparents were stronger. They felt more they were there. I had a greater feeling, an emotional feeling with them. With Clyde, it was all fright. Like, oh my God, this can't be happening. With them, it was a fright too. I was afraid, but because they were my grandparents, there was a little more trust there. It wasn't until later, when I worked on the murder cases, did spirits actually show up in a physical-like way, which is even worse. I'd rather them be in my mind. It's even harder.
That experience with the accident sounds horrendous. It must have been a very, very painful experience, the recovery and...
Very painful. Very painful, for years. When you cut through your whole face, you're down to the bone. Nerves have to grow back together. And when nerves grow back together, it's like an electric shock to your, my face would, especially the cold weather, my face would twitch, my lip was like this, and it was extremely painful, being sewn back together. they had to sew layers of it back together, layers before they got to the skin. So it was very, very painful. My leg was in pain for years. The reactions from people was difficult. Like, oh my God, look at your face.
Oh,
You know,
geez.
I always look like, and I still do, like I have lipstick over here because it's the red part. And, so what I'm saying is you're dealing with something physically painful, and now you're dealing with something emotionally painful. And now you're having these weird psychic mind things, and you really wonder if maybe you did knock your head and your nuts after that. I certainly know that I was in so much pain, and I'm not really talking physically here, I'm talking emotionally and mentally, that I really did want to take my life. I did not want to go on. It was too difficult for me.
Mm.
And I never talked about going to the other side for many, many years. Nobody talked about it. I mean, you were like considered cuckoo if you would even say that or like that. So I never talked about it. But in about 1978, Dr. Raymond Moody came out with Life After Life. And I didn't know about it. It was my father who gave me the book, which is kind of a surprising because he was not into this stuff. When I read Dr. Moody's book, I thought, wow, I'm not the only one. There are other people. They've seen this uh, all over the world. I mean, not just here, all over the world. He had case studies. It's not like nowadays. Everybody talks about just about everybody talks about this openly. They have an organization that's worldwide called IONS, and it's for the near-death experience people. I didn't know about all that stuff. We didn't have any of that, and it took me into really the 80s before I started openly talking about my near death. And then I didn't talk about it much until much, much later.
What is it about the near-death experience that ignites psychic abilities in some people? Do you think that there's a link
I
there?
researched that. I did
Yeah.
research that. And it is a knock on the head,
Uh-huh.
especially a knock on the head, and that there's a part of your brain. It is the same part as the creative part of your brain. And it's in that hemisphere of creativity that begins to just open up to a different kind of realm. And we certainly know, all you have to do is know an artist or look at a really artist painting, drawings, music, any of the art forms. And you're so aware that these people think and feel and see differently, hear differently than we do, than most people, right? And so it's that part of the brain that just opens up. And more tests are being done about the psychic mind, scientific testing that is coming out with decent conclusions that, oh yeah, these really things do happen. So it's usually thought about. There was a man that was electrified, and he fell over and he hit his head. And when he came back, he was like me. He started having visions. He started knowing things about people he'd never met before, just like me. I don't know you at all. I've never met you before, but I know intimate things about your life. They're not vague. They're not like you're going to take a trip. That's what some people look at psychics say, oh, they're also phony. They're not. I mean, you can really be specific by age, by year, by people in your life, um, people that are living and people that are not living anymore, living in this planet, life after life. You go to another dimension, another level of place.
When did you, I guess, come to peace with this new role in your life?
Well, by nature, I'm a little bit rebellious, and I can get into a defensive mode really easy. So I kind of really kept it quiet. I had people that knew me, even in my family, uh, devil worshiper, liar, con, phony, fake. I've got all the names. Got them all, heard them all. So I wasn't at peace with it because I had felt that I was always defending myself. When I became more accepted by people that were coming in my life, one woman said, you really should write a book. It was my first book about this, and talk about when people come for readings, what it's like. I began to have this feeling of, oh, it's okay. I can talk about this. I can be accepted. Little by little, it began to happen. I began to feel comfortable with people teaching people the tarot, teaching people how to grow their own ESP. That was in the early 80s. I started classes and I began to like what I was doing more. I felt more comfortable about who I was, but I was still struggling with people calling me a lot of not very nice names, like accusing me without knowing. That's why I say, if just because you didn't have the experience doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It took all the way 10, 25 years before I began to be really comfortable with who I am, what I'm doing, uh, because it becomes your whole life. You know, I have an ex-husband that told me, don't do this anymore. I don't want you to do this anymore. Well, he's an ex-husband. It would be like telling an artist, cut off your hands. Don't make any more music. Don't draw anymore. I couldn't live that way. It's not separate. It's not, here's my psychic life. And for a while, that's how I lived it. Here's my psychic life, and here's the real June. I began to realize that was who I was. That was me. Of course, I was a mother and I had a household and, like that. But it took many, many years for me to accept. I met a wonderful man that accepted me, who's my husband today, and encourages and supports me. And then the Haunted Bay, I started having fun with it. I started realizing I was retired so I could have fun, and I did it. Ying asked me to come and do it, and I thought, oh, okay, I'm retired. Let's go down and do this. So the acceptance of who I am grew, and I didn't feel I had to defend myself anymore. If somebody has a negative output to me, somebody thinks differently and they have different thoughts, that's their thoughts. I can't take that away from them. Maybe they've never experienced it. Maybe they've never known what it's like to know things about people and to help people. I mean, I have letters. People have written me over the years. I had a woman tell me, thank you. I was going to commit suicide before I came to see you. You gave me hope. I have all kinds of letters of people thanking me for what I've done. And I say, well, thank you. Thank you for allowing me into your life to be a part of it. And it's an acceptance of self. You have to accept yourself. And I didn't have to defend it anymore. If someone doesn't like it, don't watch the video. Don't read my books. Go away. That's how I look at it now.
Thank you very much for, doing this, telling us your story, your amazing story. And we will be looking forward to working with you as soon as we get out of quarantine.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.